Hey everyone, welcome to the Next Play podcast. I'm an angel investor, former founder, and most recently spent the past 5 years at Notion. Super excited to be bringing on great people to talk about their career moves, picking companies to start and join, behind the scenes of their decision making, and what they've learned throughout their journeys. So we have Devin Lewtan with here with us today. Devin is currently at the browser company working on growth, and before that was the co-founder and CEO of Mad Realities, an entertainment studio aiming to create a participatory reality TV network where audiences can influence content outcomes. She also co-founded NYU Girls Roasting Tech Guys, a pandemic-era Clubhouse dating show that everyone on their edge of their seats. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I know you joined Browser Company pretty recently, just a few months ago, as the first growth hire, and I'm a huge fan of the company and product. Seems like such a special company. What do you think makes the company so special now that you work there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for starters, I think Josh is a phenomenal CEO. That was something that was very important to me when joining the company. It's like, I want to see what a good CEO looks like. Having worked as the CEO of my own company before, I think the culture he sets is phenomenal. You can see he's so in the weeds of everything, but also lets people run and do their thing. And besides the product, the brand all being strong, I think the people are just what makes it so amazing as a company. I feel like the company does a very good job of making people feel in good hands. And that's because everyone is putting so much craft into what they work on and is very interdisciplinary. And there's no task that's too small. Like, people really think holistically about what it is. It's engineers and designers are writing copy and making content and thinking about what we could do for growth. And so it's a very collaborative, interdisciplinary culture company. I think that's just it makes it such a great place to work.
Yeah, super cool. And what does growth mean there? Like, what does your job look like?
Growth can mean a lot of things. The way that my boss Jane likes to explain it is growth is applied. So when there's something bubbling, you kind of see if you can unlock new channels or growth there. So it kind of looks like incubating marketing functions. Right now, my focus is on students with back to school. We're launching our first ambassador program, School of Browser, which is exciting because students are some of our largest evangelists. But it also looks like figuring out what our creator community looks like, playing around with paid and organic content experiments, landing pages, app store. There's so many different things. I focus on Arc Search specifically. So yeah, it looks different week to week, honestly.
Cool. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of Notion, a lot of similar projects.
You definitely understand.
Yeah, totally. Do you remember what your first few weeks were like at the company?
Yeah, I started at the beginning of the year as a part-time instructor, and I was actually focused on students then. And so immediately, some of the first stuff I did, I guess, was like, I came up with a bunch of different ideas for contests or like competitions we could do on campus. One of the ideas I pitched that did not get approved was, do you want to be the CEO of the browser company for a day? And students would be able to get to be the CEO if they had enough referrals on their campus. But it started basically with just starting a WhatsApp group of students, talking to them, doing user interviews, learning a bit more about what it is they love. And so then I got thrown into the mix of posting on Twitter pretty quickly.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like joining a company as a part-time contractor early on is like so underrated. I mean, that's how I joined Notion as well. And I've heard of other people with similar stories. Do you remember what was that process like? How did that
Yeah, it was interesting. I wasn't expecting to take a job after I left my company. And as I was figuring out what I wanted to do next, my old boss at Play, a company I worked at before, Nash, reached out with a role that she was looking to fill on the storytelling team, the storytelling growth role. And she's like, "Oh, you have a lot of people in your network. Do you know anyone that would be a good fit for this?" And I was like, "I feel like that sounds like me. Like, I'm actually interested in talking about this." And so we started talking about it. And I think pretty quickly she was like, "I need you to start. I need help. And I kind of just started at the top of the year, which was interesting because.
And I mean, how did it feel like going from a founder to an operator? It's a pretty big change.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I feel like I'm still kind of like coming to learn about shifting into an operator role or just like from employer to employee. I mean, there's a lot of really good things that come with it. Like, after making decisions for so long as a founder, it's really nice to take a step back and have someone else steer the ship while you focus on one specific area and just do your best job at that one specific thing versus being caught in the overhead of people, problems, and decisions around direction. Like my job is to focus on one area and do my best. I think some of the things I'm still kind of figuring out are like going to an individual contributor role means that you really have to scope down your experiments that you can execute it end to end as an individual person. I had the privilege of having a team working with me for the last couple of years at my company. And so thinking about how do I end to end own this in a certain amount of time really changes the way you approach problems. And I'd say the other piece that has been a shift for me, just honestly managing up or communicating up. I feel like I don't have that much experience actually doing that. Like I had people working with me. And so I guess I was the final decision maker always. And so we kind of just did what I said. And so to have to package things and communicate up and have the right amount of visibility into what I'm doing is something that I'm still used to at a larger company and having approval necessary sometimes.
Yeah, I remember being amazed that like I never realized that managing up was, you know, a skill that you had to work on, and you know, especially as a company grows, it becomes so important. So I wanna jump into your time as a founder with Mad Realities. Can you talk a little about the company and why you started it?
I have an interesting founder journey. It actually starts from something I was working on before. I feel like maybe I should give a little bit of context on the Clubhouse show I was working on. But during the pandemic, I've somersaulted into a pivot. Before I was working in tech, I was an engineer, and then very quickly started working on this show on Clubhouse called NYU Girls Resting Tech Guys with my friends, which was an interactive dating show where people in the room would come up on the stage, shoot their shot at other people, and we would roast tech guys if they talked about their businesses. This was kind of a fluke accident. It was not supposed to happen, but the first time we ever ran it, we had 5,000 people listening to us live, listening to us facilitate these conversations with people. And this was kind of my foray into the world of entertainment and media. So very quickly, we signed with WME. We had a bunch of celebrity guest judges coming on the show. We were working with brands. We tried to have show put into production. And we kind of saw what the back end of entertainment looks like in Hollywood and how there are middlemen that take cuts on everything, and it's slow and it's outdated. Everything that's new on the internet and kind of like doesn't have uh, its form is still emerging, is tried to be pushed down into things that exist like podcasts and like TV shows and everything that already exists and is monetizable. And so I guess leading into my company, a lot of what I saw there and was very like disappointed in seeing became more of an opportunity when Web3 became more popular in summer 2021. And the conversation shifted of, okay, we've seen what shifting ownership from centralized platforms or like ownership at the top level down to more grassroots community movements looks like for artists, for musicians. What does it look like for entertainment or content or shows? And so Mad Realities was born out of the idea of like, what would it look like to shift funding and ownership for content? So we launched a dating show, which was funded entirely by NFT roses, where people could vote on the cast and bachelorettes of each of our episodes each week. And this show was kind of the proof of concept for what later was supposed to be basically audience-owned TV as a platform.
Sounds very different than the browser company.
I mean, there's a lot of learnings that go into it. Yes, it's very different. But in the same way, I think there's something actually really interesting to be said around this like new emerging shape of companies that are branded software plays. It's like it has the loyalty and community that a brand has, but then it also has utility or value in the form of software. And it's a kind of tricky spot to be in, but a really special place that makes people really love what it is. And so I think there is actually more similarities than it might seem on the surface to.
Yeah, no, super interesting. And you know, you spent 3 years working on this company. Like, what did you learn as a founder?
Mm-hmm. I learned a lot of things. I would say the first thing, or one of the most important things I learned, was how to ask for help. I think it's really common for people who are founders or who have chips on their shoulder or security complexes or whatever it is to see asking for help as a sign of weakness and having shame around talking about the things that might not be working. But as a founder, you just hit a point where you're like, if I don't get help, I will drown. I will die. You need people, whether that's in the form of teammates or advisors that you can call or just like anyone really. That is such an important lesson to learn, just how to ask for help. I'd say a second piece to that, kind of on the same theme of like shame. I think learning how to take responsibility for things is something that you learn as a CEO. Like everything, when you're the CEO, everything rolls up to you and everything is your responsibility at the end of the day. If you're someone on your team mess something up, it's your fault that you did not equip them for success. And I think learning how to say, hey, I take responsibility for this. I feel ownership over this. And like, I will work to improve this is something that's actually changed the way I communicate and my relationships in my personal life as well. And I feel like it's just like removed any shame or embarrassment around mistakes. And that's actually huge learning.
Yeah. Do you think you've applied some of these learnings to being an operator as well now?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. I'd say so many of the things I've learned around these two pieces are true. So like, I feel like you have to be resourceful in any job and asking for help and kind of identifying where you need help is important. I don't think anyone wants you to just be like drowning with a bunch of things. You're supposed to like create and work out of a problem versus just being like stuck owning all of it yourself. There's a time to ask for help. And yeah, I mean, also like in the world of experimenting, you just try things and try things and try things and they don't work. You might feel embarrassed at first, but like that is how you know that well as well.
Totally. Yeah.
Taking away embarrassment is important.
No, 100%. And I want to take a step back and go back to NYU girls roasting tech guys. I remember seeing it go so viral. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's so the first night we ever ran this show, we had 5,000 people listening to us live. And it's very uncommon to I mean, the internet mints new stars every day. Like this is more common that we see, but I had never experienced this before. And the internet in high doses is like drugs. But I would say there's a lot of pros and cons to having something grow so fast. I was running this with 7 of my best friends from college and we all had different ideas of what it was supposed to be. And unlike building something where you have time to decide what it is and what your North Star is and what you're working towards, we all wanted different things out of it. And so that's really tricky, but also like, you know what momentum feels like, it like it's moving and you can feel it and people are coming in and reaching out. And that is what I mean when I say it feels like drugs, when you just are like seeing all this activity around it and opportunity and paths it can take. And that was definitely a crazy experience and ride for a good number of months.
And yeah, and so ultimately this like morphed into the company you started.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that we learned both around like participatory media. So the show was very participatory and was kind of a concept for what we were doing at Mad Realities at a different production scale. It was audio only, but it was really interesting because while we were, I guess, talent or the hosts, the people who were coming up on stage were very much the reason that the show was entertaining, and they added a lot of character and personality, and it wouldn't have been what it was without other people being a part of it so easily either. And I think that was actually one of the things that made people feel so connected to it or like loyal to it, because if they were able to be a part of it or influence it or get their friend to go up on stage, then they felt more connected to the outcome. And so from a media model standpoint, I think that was very interesting to look at. And then seeing just like what the alternative was with how financing actually works of media and content at different levels of fidelity. It was just like, wow, we had this happen overnight. Of course, that's unexpected, but the speed at which we were able to achieve things from the internet versus having these like old dudes who don't understand the internet tell us what we can and can't do and make like no money from it, was just kind of revealing an opportunity for something new in the middle.
Yeah, I love seeing like side projects turn into something bigger, like when they go viral, and you really never know. I mean, so many things in my career have really started as just, random side projects that just
Totally.
completely grew beyond my expectations. And I always tell people, like, I think it's, especially like early on in your career, it's like the best thing you can be doing is just like experimenting and getting things out there. And you just never know, lead to being an operator somewhere, starting something, so
Totally.
many possible outcomes.
It's funny, like very specifically, the step-by-step way that this came to be was we were doing a Clubhouse show. We had an offer from Spotify to do a live show on their new Clubhouse clone, Greenhouse, so Green Room. It doesn't even exist, I don't think. I got excited about the idea of pitching them Spotify Soulmate, meet your soulmate on Spotify, people who listen to the same music as you. Then from there, I told a friend of mine about that. She was like, I love this idea so much. I hope you don't mind. I found an engineer who wants to build this with us. We started to build Spotify Soulmate. Then we were like, oh, it's actually kind of confusing because you need a critical mass for this to work because people need to authenticate in. And so there's only so many people that you can match with. What's a better way to kind of like fix the cold start problem? So then we were like, what if it's Twitter mutuals? What if we did hot or not on Twitter and you match with people that you follow that follow you back? And if you swipe on 10 people, then you unlock, you get paywalled and you have to buy. And that was like our plan. And then we were building it. And as it was happening, both me and the engineer got really into crypto, fully pivoted into crypto. He ended up being our first engineer. And that was like the actual step-by-step like side project bubbling up into something new.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think everyone can learn from that, and you just, again, you never know where it'll lead you.
Yeah, unless you try.
Exactly. So I think you're very much qualified for this question, but I want to ask you, for tech guys who are looking at themselves in the mirror and wearing their Allbirds, trying to live a little, what advice would you give them?
Don't take yourself so seriously. I feel like people are always taking themselves so seriously online or pride themselves on not taking themselves seriously, but stop trying so hard. Just and make some friends outside of tech. I think it's good to have variety in your life to kind of show you different worldviews.
I'll pass it on to folks who ask me.
Yeah. I mean, I know you have your Notion template, but I feel like you're not taking yourself so seriously. I feel like it's exactly right? Like
there's times I can definitely do better. So, and, I mean, just kind of looking back at all, the things you've started, like it seems like you're just really good at picking up on trends. What do you think we're going to look back on in tech and, just laugh at, or might look stupid looking back in the future?
I feel like the easy answer is like some of the hardware stuff, but my answer right now is around just like how trends happen on like more on the media side. I feel like in this very moment right now, we're seeing some very strong memes go far around like Charlie XCX Broad Summer and very demure, very mindful, or like all these different trends that are just blowing up and taking over on a scale that I would say is wider than the typical virality we see. Like, I feel like you see virality in niches, but like this is like nationwide, global virality. One of the things, there's this like quote from Sex and the City that I love, and it's like, first come the gays, then come the girls, and then comes the industry. And I feel like this cycle is happening so fast that like if you search in your inbox for like Brad, it's just like, why am I getting an email from JustWorks saying like Broad Summer is over? I don't want that. I don't need that. There's like all these companies that try and latch on to the culture that's created, and I feel like it's happening really badly right now. We're just gonna look back and be like, oh,
for what it's worth, I don't know what any of these references are, which clearly says something about me.
I know. Well, like, that's why I said it's more media side. I guess like in tech, I think the hardware stuff is very silly. Like working on a company that focuses on interfaces, you don't need separate products. The only reason is for like maybe like makes you feel something more like by touching it or feeling attached, but I have enough going on here.
Totally. Are there in on a related note, like, are there any trends that are like,
I mean, I don't think it's underrated, but I think this like rise of the run club stuff is very similar to the original thesis of our dating show. It was like from both of our shows we worked on, it was how can you create a space that's not like explicitly for dating, but like people come together, pay attention to something, and then maybe meet single like-minded people along the way. I feel like that was very much proven true with our shows, and you're seeing it again with all these like IRL meetups around a certain topic or a central pillar. So I think that's interesting. But something I'm excited about is honestly just like the new ways that we reclaim religion. I think that I mean, this is more talked about now, I think, with the loneliness epidemic, like economy, but a lot of the work that's been done around community in the past has been around pillars that are not strong enough to hold people together over a long amount of time. And if you look at some of the longest lasting communities, it's actually religion. And so it's like religion in extreme is bad, but like how can we learn from that and actually apply it into our life and probably fix a lot of our problems? And so I don't know what that looks like with technology, but I get excited by some of the different applications. I feel like there's kind of interesting direct applications, like literally focusing on religion and then like conceptually playing on it that I still have yet to see anything that like that's the winning one.
sounds like an interesting premise for a new side project one day?
I loved one of the things that I still think is so funny is like what it looked like to like build your own synagogue or like little like squad where you like have your church or your synagogue or your temple and you like have to assemble different people in it. There's so many different directions that I could go, but for another time.
Yeah, I'm very curious to hear more about this, but for another time. So, before going viral and starting a company and joining Browser Company, I know you were actually an intern at Troops, which was acquired by Salesforce, and an early product engineer at Clay, which recently raised at a $500 million valuation. It seems like you're just really great at picking companies. I mean, your track record is fantastic so far. How do you think about how do you evaluate a company as an operator when you considering joining?
Yeah, I want to say that it was intentional and that I knew what I was doing. I did not. I mean, in college, I knew I was interested in human computer interaction. And I interned at Troops, which was a chatbot, and was really excited all of a sudden from working at Troops around conversational interfaces. And my thesis actually in school, I created my own major, ended up being around like the power of conversation and basically like different ways that we interact with technology and learn from conversation and apply it into products we use. So I'd say like Troops was lucky. I think that my sister was like, hey, they're hiring for a customer success intern. I started there, made my way to engineering internally in the org, and then actually lost my job offer during the pandemic, graduating, and didn't know what I was going to do. And I found Play, which was very under the radar. I found it like in Nash, who was my boss's. I knew her from some things like bio, and I reached out being like, hey, I have experience in integrations. I think this is really cool. I would love to talk. And then I took a job as a customer engineer, which was like working with our customers, building special implementations, and did not expect, I mean, I loved the product. I think that it's a phenomenal product and the founders are amazing. I feel like in general, it's like, do you believe in the product? Do you use the product? Those are like good ways of deciding. I also thought it was interesting. Nash had left first round to go work at the company. It was a portfolio company. I think that's always a good signal. But yeah, I mean, I was one of the first 10 employees at Clay, and I think a lot has changed, but not that, but also like it stayed relatively similar in product since I was there. And I mean, it's crazy to see how it's changed. I'm Karina's an amazing CEO.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing is how often Nash comes up, and it sounds like having someone like Nash, who truly is an exceptional human being in your life, is such an important thing. For me, I bet Camille Ricketts from Notion was kind of played a similar role. So, how do you find Nash in your life? That's the question.
Good question. Nash is like a fairy godmother if you're lucky to have her presence. I found Nash in college through a mentorship program. That was very lucky. But in general, I don't know. I think finding people, there's just there's certain people that you just find at certain points in your life and you try and keep that relationship there. That's honestly like the most realistic way of saying it. But yeah, I think having people around and just keeping them around, and it ends up, I guess, paying dividends, even though that's not how you should think about a relationship. But she's brought me along for
Totally.
the ride.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's super important, especially like trying to develop those relationships early on. 'Cause they will pay dividends throughout your whole life.
Totally. The people you meet when you're young. I mean, I did Rough Draft Ventures, which is like student investing at General Catalyst. Some of those relationships have gone so far in terms of just like, I'm so grateful to have met those people before they did things and have genuine friendships and like have strong foundation in my network from people who have walked through that program. But yeah, just not, you shouldn't be like seeking so intently for people. I feel like networking is kind of like anti signal, but just investing in friendships with people who are really brilliant usually goes a long way.
Totally. Totally. And I'm curious, like when, if, a friend, if any friends ask you, they're considering joining a company, like what would you tell them?
I think some of the things I said before are true. It's like, do you like the product? Do you use the product? That's a good one. Is the founder strong? Like, are they self-aware? Are they resilient? Do they have good vision but focus? What's the culture like? Like, do you actually see yourself really fitting in there? That's something that's been really important. I mean, I've seen a variety of cultures at companies. Like Troops was a lot more of like a sales bro, or where Clay was very much like, you decide what you work on. And then I think the browser company has a lot of ownership and respect and craft, but not all companies are like that. So like find the places that you actually contribute and fit in for.
Totally. Is there anything you would have done differently looking back, like in your career so far?
Always, I would say, I mean, there's a couple things. I laugh because I feel like a lot of things in my life I've kind of somersaulted into. Like I was not so intentional. I just kind of ended up landing in these places from trying things and moving and falling, basically. And I think that's served me well. But at the same time, sometimes you do want to be more intentional in commitments you sign up for. I think raising money when you have an idea, a long commitment. It's not going to blow up overnight like a show on Clubhouse. It is something that's going to take years to build real value. And you want to make sure that you are, I guess, orienting the company around your North Star versus yours around the company. Like that's very important. I think I had something written down that I loved. I didn't find it. Give me a second. Also, I think just because something is working just because people like something doesn't mean it's working. I think you know in your gut what is right and what is wrong, and you should listen to it more. Don't pay attention to what other people around you are saying if your gut does not feel aligned, because it has strong intuition. And when you get out of whack with your intuition, you are not making decisions out of confidence or conviction. It's out of fear and like lack of North Star.
Yeah, all super important things. So we're almost out of time here. I had three just super quick questions for you before we hop off. One, what's like a new-ish mobile app that you're excited about these days?
I am going to plug my friend Los. He's building Date with Los, which is an app where the only person you can date is him. And I think it's brilliant. And he's recently been experimenting with Date with Emma or different girls, seeing how that works. And I love it. I feel like that's again one of those ideas, it's like a side project that ends up actually kind of picking up traction. And it's so silly and feels like something I would have done 3 years ago. So Date with Los.
Love it. It's crazy how much starts with dating. I also had a dating project in my past, so it really is a remarkable part of our lives.
Seriously. I mean, it's like anything that gets people feeling connected to it is positive, like I think has really strong foundation and ever in dates. So I'm not
Totally.
surprised.
All right, last two. What's a podcast episode you listened to recently that you enjoyed?
Um, I had a friend recommend a Pat Grady from Sequoia episode where he talks about his values and how he makes decisions around them. And it's like 4 simple values, and that's all he goes for. Like that's his decision-making process for everything. And it's so simple and so good. I was like, work hard, be kind, think for yourself, family first. And like, that's like how he makes all his decisions. And that's kids think that their decisions. And I think that's like,
Brilliant. All right, last one. Favorite ARC feature?
routes for me on our search. It is a delightful experience. It is pulled from a bunch of different sources around the internet and create a custom page for you. We block ads. You will never see an ad again in ARC search. That's not you.
I'm a fan. Great product. Thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been awesome. I learned a ton. Super, super interesting story, and really appreciate taking the time to share with everyone.
So fun. No, definitely. Thank you for having me. This is fun to talk about.